There's this being known as Shanks and his crew. Just like many characters in One Piece, they're sailing the ocean, sailing the seas. They have their own ship with their crew traveling together on it and stuff of that such. He's the captain of his own crew, so he's the strongest of his crew. But just to give you an idea of how strong he is, tell me why even beings that are not him on his crew can threaten beings in the Navy that are pretty high up there on the food chain. Because in this world, your rank in the Navy pretty much determines how high you are up there on the food chain based on your combat ability. Like, to be one of the highest ranked beings in the Navy, you have to be one of the highest ranked fighters. So for one of Shanks' crew members to threaten a being this high up there gives you a perspective of how strong Shanks is, and we haven't even really got started in this video yet. In the world of One Piece, there's a multitude of ways to become powerful. A lot of beings in this universe are powerful because of these super powerful fruits beings can eat. They let them gain supernatural abilities off the gate. Or if you don't want to go down this route, the limitations of humans seems to be incredible in this universe. So if you don't want to go down that devil fruit route, you can get strong with physical muscles by lifting weights and resistance training. I mean, that's kind of how Shanks is. Shanks doesn't have no devil fruit powers from these fruits, so he has to get strong in other ways. In a way, it makes sense on why he's strong. I mean, even as a youngin', he was on the ship with the Pirate King man himself, the man, the myth, the legend, Roger himself. So he's kind of been hanging around with strong people while he was young. But this crew disbanded, and that's how he got his own crew. He's the one that gave Luffy his straw hat, and Shanks wanted him to promise to meet him when he becomes a great pirate, and pretty much gave up his arm for Luffy. Very strong moment, even though we know as fans with current lore, we know he could have totally used ornament hockey to block this attack, but I guess he actually wanted to give it up for Luffy to show his faith in him or whatever. You know, one can say this is a pain tolerance feat, because all of us will be crying in agony if our arm just got ripped off. He even said it's just an arm, as long as you're alive. Such honor. Oh, my bad. Am I going too fast? What is that? Oh, I mentioned hockey. Remember how I mentioned how you don't need these devil fruits to be strong? There's this thing known as hockey. It's like this universe's version of chakra, ki, like from Dragon Ball Z. The show itself animates hockey as blackish, purplish, depending on who the character is. But narratively, it's actually considered invisible. This is the equalizer on why beings with no powers can handle beings with powers, with devil fruit powers. There's beings that have devil fruits that can literally allow their body to turn into actual light using this armor enhanced energy aura inside of your body. If you master it, you can touch beings made of actual light, intangible elements and stuff. This is basically what Shanks knows. And of course, you can put armor around his either fist or the weapon he's holding as well. There's beings that can train their hockey so intensely to the point where they can actually see the future. Not super duper far in the future, like a year or nothing, but one can say Shanks can see the future. Like maybe it's implied that he can at least see 10 seconds or esque into the future, enough to see how much damage it will cause so he can know to avoid it. One can say this could be a help to his fighting speed or combat speed too, because he knows what you're about to do before you do it, which technically gives him extra time to move out the way of an attack. Shanks is one of those beings. This is something not everybody has, but he has Conqueror's Haki, this inner energy that you can pretty much overpower somebody's will. Like this creature right here that took his arm, he can just look at him and scare him away. And if you don't have enough will, he can just knock you out cold. This pretty much works on lower tiers, so he doesn't have to lay a finger on them. The writer of One Piece pretty much explains it like this. If you can knock somebody out with Haki, you're overwhelmingly stronger than them, and it's not even worth your time fighting them. Stated by the man, the myth, the legend here, that if Shanks was in the same exact scenario, that Shanks would actually be able to take out all 100,000 of the forces that Luffy was taking on during the Fishman arc. Like in this particular occasion, just being near him, if you're not strong-willed enough, you would just get knocked out. I mean, just from writer intent and status in the world of One Piece, Shanks is at least top 4 strongest when it comes to the different Emperors of the Sea. He's one of the 4 strongest pirates in the world. This kind of stuff is confirmed in the lore that his bounty is 4 billion. Being one of the strongest beings on the whole planet is no easy feat for Shanks, considering he has no devil fruit and he's a normal-sized human. If you're not familiar with the One Piece world, there's humans that are born with just bigger size in general, and these are the beings he has to be stronger than despite the size differences. Despite them having genetic advantages, he still rose above some of the bigger beings. Like down here, right, you see all these normal-sized humans, right? You see Shanks right here, right? His little normal human-sized self is stronger than some of the bigger beings or taller entities in this world, despite them being way larger than himself. Like you see, compared to himself, you see Shanks' little self, there's beings up here that are the size of skyscrapers, basically, or bigger than buildings. Compared to himself, that gives you perspective on all the different beings he has to be stronger than in this universe. We've seen Shanks clash with the strongest man in the world, Whitebeard, during the time, to show in raw power he can hang with the strongest man in the world via clashing of blades. And remember, in the Marines, there's like different rankings and stuff. Beings at the top of the food chain, we've seen beings like Whitebeard make beings at the top of the Navy look nervous and has the punching power to overpower admiral level beings and damage them severely. I just got to give you an example of how dangerous these emperors are, or these Yonkos. They can do this to Navy admiral level beings pretty high up there on the food chain in the Navy. And we've actually seen Shanks, the guy that clashed with Whitebeard, stop a punch from the Navy Admiral using his Devil Fruit abilities. Look how shocked he looks. It lets you know that, just like Whitebeard, he could pull up on a Navy Admiral as well. We know Navy Admirals can punch apart super massive ice pieces that are probably the size of small mountains. We know they can destroy this type of stuff with ease. So when you see Shanks do stuff like this, that pretty much proves Shanks has the cutting power if he really wanted to cut up big chunks of ice that make giants look small in comparison to the Rock. With a combination of his physical strength, Haki ornament, Haki enhancing the durability with invisible armor around his sword, amping his cutting power up. I don't see no reason why he shouldn't be able to slice a big chunk of ice like this if he wanted to. Stuff like this proven. If Shanks just had to, he can cut a mountain right down the middle if he really wanted to with his Haki and blade cutting power. I find it interesting that Blackbeard had the balls to pull up to Whitebeard, but of course Whitebeard was battle damage. I thought this was cool that he was able to pull up to him like this with confidence. Even though he did get overpowered, but him and his crew pulled up on Whitebeard. I find it interesting when Shanks and his crew challenged him. He said he's going to stop fighting and all this stuff because he said it's too early for him to be fighting guys like Shanks and his crew. Keep in mind, this is Blackbeard that had like 2 devil fruits. Whitebeard's also. Whitebeard can use his trimmer fruit. And this is the type of stuff he can produce, type of collateral, like ginormous mountain-sized tidal waves. These big tidal waves, and the fact it's literally stated by Sengoku, thanks to the trimmer destructive fruit, it mixed with everything like his Haki, he has the power to destroy the very world, apparently. And we seen Shanks clash with a powerful being like this. Also doing this to the clouds. Shanks' destructive power is crazy. Beings like Kid, who have a bounty of 3 billion, which is still lower than Shanks' bounty, by the way. When Luffy and Kid and Law were fighting these, 2 emperors, Kaido and Big Mom, Kid was having to withstand attacks throughout these different battles. He's been punched by Big Mom without no armor protecting him, by the way. I mentioned earlier how Shanks can see the future with his Haki and super senses, basically. Kid was about to wipe out a whole bunch of ships. Shanks wasn't having that. And I already showed you how strong Kid is. He has a bounty of 3 billion. He helped take on Yonkos and stuff with Luffy and Law. Despite all this, Shanks was mighty enough to blitz him. Too fast for him to block, and one hit Kid with a powerful sword strike. Not only did he make Kid sleepy, but he knocked out Killer, his right-hand man. That simple. They were destroyed that easily by Shanks' might. So Shanks is a menace to wipe out somebody that has a 3 billion bounty, along with somebody else that's pretty strong too. It makes you wonder on occasions like this, one-shotting 2 strong beings at the same time. It makes you wonder if his Haki, it could be just Haki. They're making it seem like it's actual flame when it's really not. But yeah, this particular occasion is from a non-canon movie, but I wouldn't be surprised if he can do this in canon. And it's pretty much confirmed, even though it happened off screen, he got in a scuffle with Kaido himself, one of the 4 emperors, that has a bounty even higher than Shanks's, honestly. Every time Kaido brings up beings that are on his level or ballpark, notice that Shanks is always in the equation, so there's writer intent for you right there. Based on a whole bunch of lower tiers of One Piece being able to level islands, it's also implied that Yonko level beings can level an island because the people that were watching these 2 Yonkos battle, Kaido and Big Mama, it was like, get off Onigashima, they could level the entire island. I mean, look what they was doing to the environment, so it kind of makes sense. A good way to understand how strong Shanks is to understand the fact that he can hit harder than Luffy when he was in them Gear 4 early days, like back in Dressrosa days. Because in this occasion, Kaido, like this was before Luffy learned Rio and all that good stuff, he barraged Kaido with a whole bunch of hits, and none of that seemed to matter. He took no damage at all. Yet we know Shanks can damage Kaido. He's the emperor along with Kaido. We know Luffy can easily level mountains, city blocks, and fold a nice chunk of a town or a big chunk of Dressrosa, which is an entire island, but he did fold a town's worth at least. And those attacks that Luffy did in that same form couldn't do nothing to Kaido, blah, blah, blah. So it's really reasonable to believe that Shanks could level an entire mountain. That should be light work. If Luffy can level a nice chunk of Dressrosa or split it, Shanks is way stronger than him back in these days. One could argue that Shanks can level the whole thing or the whole island with his cutting power, Haki strikes, and everything put together. Or if you don't believe he can split it down the middle, he should be at least be able to tremble it. I mean, his strikes are so crazy when he pulls up on Whitebeard and they clash blades, even though he has one arm, they can still split the entire sky. One could say the clouds. This is like a Yonko feat you only see Yonko or emperors do to one another. It lets you know that they're on even playing fields. Despite him only having one arm, keep note that he only has one arm, but he's still a Yonko. It didn't change his tier, really. I mean, other emperors like Luffy, who can make their fists the size of mountains or even islands, literally stated right here, Luffy can punch right through the island itself. And when you see how big his fist is, this statement is not an exaggeration, even though we never seen him do it. This has to be true. Despite him being this powerful, his bounty, Luffy's bounty, even like this, he's still lower than Shanks' bounty, despite Luffy getting this new power-up, Legendary Form Gear 5. So it's a fair assumption that Shanks could level on the island as well. I mean, it is true that bounties don't always reflect fighting ability, but it's a part of it. So for you to have a bounty this high, it does kind of show your combat ability and how much of a threat you are in general. It would be weird if he couldn't cut an island right down the middle, considering all the beings he's fought. I mean, he got a friendly rivalry with the world's strongest swordsman known as Mihawk. They talk about fighting like it's a casual thing. Their duels are legendary. And Mihawk can do stuff like this. So yeah, it's fair to say Shanks can do stuff like this as well. It would be weird at this point if he couldn't, based on narrative and writer intent. I've already mentioned admirals a few times in this video. This isn't the only clash he's had with an admiral. There was an admiral known as Green Bull that's a literal forest. Shanks with Conqueror's Haki can hit people this far away. He's nowhere near the area. Shanks pretty much says, yo, you need to back off these youngins because they're already worn out already. To an admiral. Thanks to Shanks being able to outwardly manifest his will to overpower beings without needing to touch them, thanks to his Conqueror's Haki, your inner willpower you can project outwardly in this universe. Since we already know, based on scans like this, that the higher rank you are in the military kind of lets you know how strong you are when it comes to combat paralysis. Something that he might be able to do in canon, but this happened in non-canon events of a movie. Shanks was able to, without even getting near Vice Admiral level beings right below the Admiral rank, he can knock them out with Conqueror's Haki, overpowering their will with his own will. Without even getting near him, he can take down Vice Admiral ranks. That's ridiculous. An Admiral stated this, was even impressed in this movie, but yeah, it's just a movie. Just throwing this out there. Why not? Shanks lacks showings. I mean, in non-canon movies, admirals like Kizaru, who are literally made of light, they implied that his speed or power in general is not a real threat to him like that. Kizaru, a being that's literally made of light in the lore, can shoot light blasts. They was on the way to Shanks. Shanks deflected all of that mess, then proceeds to bum rushing. Kizaru also jumping ridiculously high in the air, showing his physicals. And it's shown he can slice huge parts of rock that big. Just to give you perspective on all this junk he sliced, this is something he should be able to do in canon based on narrative, even though this is right here non-canon, based on the stuff we've seen him do, writer intent, and he's an emperor with a 4 billion bounty, with his own crew, one of the strongest men in the whole world. This kind of stuff does make sense. I do think this would be accurate in canon, threatening an admiral. And threatening admirals is a bigger deal than you might think. Let's talk about admirals for 2 seconds. A battle between two admirals are so evenly matched that their battle can go on for 10 days straight, almost equal in strength. They affected the island on a permanent scale to where, yeah, it's permanently looking like this now. Half ice, half magma type stuff. That's the power of an admiral. Now that you know that all admirals, when it comes to raw power, output, strength, blah, 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 they're similarly, this would be a good time to let you know how strong certain admirals are. Like when it comes to, you know, they have different abilities, but when it comes to their raw power output, a lot of them are similar. You got admirals out here that can pull down meteors from space. This is the kind of power that Yonkos have to encounter or counter with Haki, because Haki can transcend all. And Fujitori can lift up like an island's worth of buildings or debris. That's a lot of weight. Shanks is one of those characters, just similar to how Roger's able to battle beings with devil fruit because of his ridiculous Haki and things of that such. That's how Shanks is. Because Haki, stated by Kaido here, an emperor, he would know, wouldn't he? Talks about how Roger made the earth heal. I mean, that's basically why Shanks is a beast, because Haki transcends all. Despite Whitebeard, even in his prime, having this powerful fruit that allows his attacks to hit harder and Haki on top of it, Roger with no devil fruit is still able to clash with such a being. But all of this stuff could be just me, because Whitebeard was sick here, but he was still considered the strongest man in the world like this. And Shank was still able to clash with him. I'm not saying he's exactly equal, but he's not too far off to where he would just get mollywopped by Whitebeard, right? It would be a tough fight still, you know what I mean? But what do you guys think? What do you think is the biggest object that Shanks could slice up? We're probably going to see him at least fight Gear 5 Luffy sometime in the near future. But yeah, Shanks does lack screen time. But based on the writing style of One Piece, it's just a certain power level he has to be at. Heck, when it comes to the sky splitting stuff, something Shanks can definitely do. There's been calculations online to estimate the amount of energy needed to split the sky, considering the sky is nowhere near the characters where they clash. It's way in the sky for their blows to affect something that far away. Folks have calculated online. Heck, or even certain YouTubers even calculated this. The energy needed to split the sky, it would take a minimum power needed that it could level multiple continents or a continent or two, or at least tremble them. People have calculated this. This is not my estimation. This is calculations online saying this. And since Shanks is a top tier, this kind of makes sense with his lore. Of course, that's him enhancing his willpower outwardly and enhancing his strikes or his sword with extra raw power or destructive force, of course, because of hockey. This type of stuff would imply that somebody like Shanks, if we were to take those calculations seriously, he could level, when it comes to real life terms, different sized moons, maybe smaller moons, or even the moon itself. But if you don't want to believe the moon itself, even smaller moons, one could argue that he could level if we take those calculations as serious. I think with his observation hockey being able to see into the future, mixed with his already crazy reflexes, I would say if somebody like Rayleigh can keep up with admirals that are literally the speed of light and can kick at the speed of light, I would say Shanks definitely can react to stuff speed of light at least too. I mean, this is little light anime showings like this to show his speed, reflexes. Yo, Shanks, you got some explaining to do. How are you a pirate but you can pull up in here with the 5 elders and have a conversation with them? Do you respect Shanks though? How strong do you think he is? But before I get going, I gotta say thanks for the donations, everybody. Helps out a lot. Respect Shanks though. I'm glad you are enjoying your time on the channel. Make sure you check out the playlist on the channel to see other How Strong videos. If you like what this channel is offering, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys later.